Okay, I feel like I'm back home, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. Well, I hope you're ready because you're going to hear a lot of meat and solutions to what is going on currently in the state of California regarding comprehensive sex ed and the California health frameworks. And a lot of what you're going to hear is going to be new, and it's going to contradict a lot of what you're seeing out on social media. Great thing about social media is you can get the message out and you can get information, but I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said, most of what you read on the internet isn't true. And so you need to be careful, and there are days I can get really frustrated on the information out there because good, well-meaning parents are trying to find out answers to these questions. And a lot of what we're going to present this afternoon is going to be new. And they're plans that we've been working on, and we've been working with Alliance Defending Freedom on some policies, on looking in the background of some of the legislation and what parental rights can be asserted and not asserted in California under the current state of our laws. So if you'll put our slideshow up. So we're going to talk about the blueprint and how you can take back and reassert your parental rights. Next slide, and we're okay. So you guys, and you just went through this, are used to earthquakes. Yes, and so you wouldn't hire someone whose expertise in building a house is tornadoes. You would hire an architect that does blueprints for earthquakes. That's the situation we're in here in California. Dawn had mentioned that we've been in Sacramento for over a decade. Actually, Capital Resource Institute has been around we're in our 32nd year, and August 1st was my 20th year as CRI. I started as a homeschool mom, part-time, and I was the program director, and my job was to run around to school board meetings and try and organize parents and help them assert their rights regarding confidential medical services. So slowly worked my way up to be executive director, and countless school board meetings. I think if I'm not at a school board meeting, I'm at least watching one or two online every single week. Just watch Chino Valleys. And then I watch them in other states too, so I'm kind of considered a bit of a nerd. But when it comes to your homes and your families, you don't want to put them at risk. You want to ensure that your children are protected. And we need to do that. You can go ahead, next slide. Anyone recognize this? Yeah. This is what's happening in California. And while we have been busy with our families, working, volunteering at our church, they have been passing laws, and the ACLU and Planned Parenthood, as you heard earlier, have been busy taking away parental rights, or at least trying to, and passing really egregious legislation. And it is causing a crumbling of the foundation. And we at Capital Resource Institute, along with Real Impact, as well as the Let Parents Decide kind of broader coalition, we want to present to you and help you come up with a plan to restore sanity when it comes to our public schools and your rights. And you can go ahead, next slide. And this is about our homes. You guys heard earlier, you have rights. Matt Sharp from ADF talked about them. And let me take a side note. For those of you that don't know Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, the last 9 years, they have won all of their 9 cases, or last 8 years, all of their 9 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. They are one of the winningness, they have a higher percentage than the ACLU before the U.S. Supreme Court. So when I have a question about policy or what I can and can't do legally, ADF is my go-to for that reason. I think only 30% of cases ever even get heard before the Supreme Court, let alone 9 of them heard and you won them all. So anyway, I say that because I consult with them a lot before we bring some of these blueprints to you. And we want to encourage you to join with Let Parents Decide and actually start pushing that wall back that was up on Matt's slide and lowering that and reasserting what are our God-given rights. And we'll go to, yeah, okay, we're on the right one. So your home. Parents, you guys are the sole authority on this stuff. Sex education, and I was watching Pastor Jack, he's been talking about sex from the pulpit on Wednesday nights, and we've been watching them, which is a little odd. I haven't put it as my Facebook status, watching a pastor talk about sex. But so it's been a bit interesting to see Pastor Jack talking about it, and I noticed he does this. Are you with me? So that proves I've been watching it. So you guys, it's not just that you are the primary sex educators of your children. Parents in the church should be the only sex educators of your children. Sex doesn't belong to the government. It was created by God. And as believers, we need to own that. We have to contend for the faith. We have to stand and be strong for that. You know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are believing it. And it's because the left, headed by Satan, is very subtle, like it says in Genesis, and crafty. And they have been misinforming people on what's going on. How many of you have heard about the California Healthy Frameworks? Raise your hand. Raise them high. Okay, that's been in the news a lot. Well, it's interesting. How many of you knew that the California Department of Education does not require health as a graduation requirement? Very few people know that. Now, local school districts are requiring it, but you can change that. That is something you can change. And if you can't change the policymakers, forgive me, Mr. Nah, change who the policymakers are if they won't change the policy. So right now in Chino Valley, it is required. Get rid of it before the health framework textbooks come and they tell you have to buy these textbooks with all of this really outrageous information. The California Department of Education does not require health as a graduation requirement. Why are school districts mandating it and now adding the textbooks that come along with the frameworks? The only people that can stop that are you in the local community who have school boards who are elected by you, the people. I will come down and help, but I can only do so much. But that's an example of, you hear about the health frameworks and you think, oh wow, you know, we have to do health. And then you find out that locally it's required for graduation, but not by the California Department of Education, by your local elected officials. So that's one of those small things that you need to know and you can change. I'm going to talk about a few concrete, specific things that Let Parents Decide and our coalition are going to be working on and moving forward with. And we'll take the next slide. So does anyone know what this is? My husband convinced me people would see that it was a foundation. And we were going through pictures and I was like, I don't know, it looks like barbed wire. Anyway, so it's building a foundation of a building. And for as many laws as the ACLU, Planned Parenthood in their trainings will tell you are against you, you have a foundation both with the Constitution and in the courts. As Matt with ADF was talking about, the remedy on these issues is going to local control and to the local school board and the policymakers in Sacramento. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to change much with the policymakers in Sacramento today. I'm working on that. But I do know we have influence over our school board members that we see on Sundays, that we see at meetings, we run into at the grocery store. And if they aren't going to listen to us about what we want for our children with our public tax dollars, then we need to change the policymakers. And just because they're nice, or they go to a church, doesn't give them the right to continue to let this stuff go on in our school districts with our children and our tax dollars. But we have to assert that. No one's going to do it for us. So how many of you are lobbyists? How many of you have lobbied before? Okay. Everyone should be raising their hands because we're all lobbyists. I know it sounds like it's a big word. The only thing that lobbying is advocating for what you believe in. I lobbied my husband for a new outfit for presentation. We negotiated. Sometimes he says no, sometimes he says yes, and sometimes there's a bit of a compromise. Usually it's a yes. But we all lobby. Our kids lobby us. Can I stay up and watch American Idol? Can I stay up later? That's all lobbying is. You are your child's lobbyist. You guys are the only ones that are going to advocate for them. No one's going to go before the school board and advocate for your children. You have to do it. Next slide. This is what we think about, even I did, and I homeschooled, and I remember going, and I would do even homeschooling a list for my daughter for what she was going to get her supplies. I loved that. I loved going and shopping for supplies, and what was I going to wear the first day? Schools have changed. It's no longer this innocent, sweet picture, and I think you've heard that quite a bit, next slide, from the speakers earlier. Schools have become, especially in California, centers where all they do is sabotage parental rights throughout the curriculum, and they're trained to do it, and they are doing it. They've done it, you've seen with the sex ed frameworks. They're doing it comprehensive sex education. Those of us that support school choice with charter schools, they have now imposed all of these same laws specifically on charter schools, so you're not safe there. In other states, they're trying to do it on private schools. So we need to wake up and take care of this. So they're sabotaging, actively, parental rights and the role we play in our children's lives. Monica talked about that. Next slide. Deception. The schools are deceiving you, whether it's the answer to the question, oh, are you teaching this in our classroom? And they say no. Or they're allowing your minor to leave campus for a confidential medical services, and then as one of the brochures says, you're going to complete it by the staff and say your absence is excused as a parent signature, you were with a staff member, so that they can still get the money. And then they go on to tell you what to say to the parent if the parent asked if the kid was in class, that they were with an administrator during that time. If that isn't deception and broken trust, I don't know what is. Next slide. Violation of privacy. We've talked about this, and in California, we are a little bit different in that we have a specific law, AB 1266, that does specifically tell the schools they must allow a biological male who believes he's a female to participate in sports, go ahead and access all the facilities they want to, which means locker rooms, restrooms, overnight trips, and they're keeping it from the parent. So if your child is going to science camp and your little girl is going to room with a biological boy who believes he's a girl, you are not going to be told until you have a policy in place that says, we're going to tell you that this may happen. And I will tell you, it's happening. It's happening in a lot of places. So we've got sabotage, deception, violation of privacy, And now we're going to go on to kind of what some of the solutions are and what we can do, what kind of a blueprint we have put together, and the policies that we're going to be advocating and traveling the state and asking you to join with us and partner with us to take this state back. We have the foundation. We have parental rights. We have the law. We have truth. The most important thing is we do have truth on our side. We need to assert our rights and assert what we're able to as we work on changing the current climate in Sacramento. Because it is about the people in power who are, when Matt, I loved his graphic when Matt had the kind of wall that was being built between parental rights and the school, and that when you choose to put them in public school, there is some of that you give up. And they love to quote the Palmdale case, school districts do. But they don't quote the other part of the case where it says you have a remedy. And the remedy is to change the policies, whether it's in Sacramento or at your school board. And so we have put together, and we're announcing it today, so if you sign up for our email list and you'll have opportunity, we'll be sending out more information. But we have put together along and running it by our attorneys at ADF, a student privacy policy that we would like to see school districts adopt. And basically what it says, it's a policy that says if a child's privacy might be violated, meaning they have someone they're letting access opposite gender, biological gender facilities, if that's going on in this school, because the schools do have a right to do it, that is the law, we are going to let you know that your child's privacy may be violated because they have rights too, and what your options are. So we're not going to out a kid. Chino Valley School District is huge. If you got a note that said, by the way, your child's privacy may be violated, it doesn't mean you know the student, the class, the teacher. We're not naming any names, but then you as a parent can do your due diligence and go back and say, hey, for every overnight trip, this is what I want, how I want my child accommodated. You need to assert your rights. They aren't just going to be handed to you. So this policy makes it clear. Okay, the law says we have to allow a gender nonconforming student to access those facilities. But it also allows me to protect my child from that violation of privacy. Again, you're your child's lobbyist. If you don't advocate for them, no one's going to. And I can tell you, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU are at every school board meeting every week. So you need to assert that right and protect your kids, both their innocence and when it comes to student privacy, I mean, there's a lot of security problems that go on. And so I just want to encourage you. That's one of the 3 policies we are going to be working on this next year. Next one. Oops, actually, that was the policy. Next one, we're one behind. Okay, confidential medical services. This is a big one. And it broke recently in a video that came out about minors leaving campus for confidential medical services. Now, the law does say you can do it. I do not know a school district in California that isn't doing it. Even if you're considered closed campus, which says you can't go to Taco Bell at lunch, there's a little asterisk that basically says, but confidential medical services is that exception. So unless your policy, and we have written one and worked with our attorneys on it, that says, yes, current law says you can let the child go, but our school district isn't going to let a child go without getting parental permission for any reason. That's roughly what the policy says. These kids sadly do have, because of California law, a constitutional right to privacy, and they can exercise it. But it doesn't mean they get to exercise it during math class. You don't get to exercise your constitutional right from 8:30 to 2 and expect the government, your school and your teachers and your administrative office, to lie to you and the other parents. This is one that, again, you can't believe what the other side is telling you and what you're reading online. This couldn't be more clear in law. And what we did, and recently we sent it to ADF and to have them help us write a policy on this issue that was legally sound. But what happened was schools were letting kids go. And so back in the late 80s, an assemblyman went ahead and introduced a piece of legislation that says, okay, if you're going to let them go, you need to let parents know. And then it's up to the parents to change it at the local level. He was so upset that this was going on, he was outraged. Well, at first, conservative parents got upset, and they were writing him and saying, why are you doing this school policy that lets them go? He responded back saying, oh, I don't agree with it, but it's the state of the law. So I want local parents to know so they can go to their local school board and change that. The problem is, in the last several years, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU have not only gone in and told school boards they have to let them go for confidential medical services, but they put it in every single one of the California Healthy Youth Act compliant pieces of curriculum. So page after page on the lesson plans, it tells the minor, you may go during the school day, talk to your school nurse or your teacher, you can be excused and your parents won't know. They, in their own curriculum, you can find it, it's in every single curriculum being taught from the teacher that your child can do this behind your back. That's definitely sabotaging your parental rights. That is the policy currently in Chino Valley Unified. I don't know a school district where it isn't since the California Healthy Youth Act, but we have a policy that says, you know what? If my kid's gone from school for any reason, I need to know. I need to know where they are. There might be a family emergency. My child may not know their whole medical history. There's lots of reasons. If they want to exercise the so-called constitutional right, they need to do it outside of school hours, and the school doesn't need to partner in deception of the parents. And that is one of the policies that we really, really want to push forward in the future. So, again, something that we're going to be working on. And last but not least, and we'll go to the next slide, the opt-out. Can you opt out? Can you not? Can you opt out of all of the California Healthy Youth Act? What about the gender identity? What about the new health frameworks? There's a lot of information out there, and ADF covered it a little earlier. But we stumbled upon an education code somewhat recently that says you may opt out of all or part of health education based on your religious convictions. And then it said, and for this purpose of law, religious convictions includes moral beliefs. So it's a little bit of an easier bar, than going to court to prove that this is in my Bible that says this. So it was brought up earlier. What's it called? The California Healthy Youth Act? I think that would be health. So I went through all the curriculums, and I went through every single subject in Positive Prevention Plus, in Advocates for Youth. Every single one would fall under health. So the confusion comes because the California Healthy Youth Act talks about opt-out and then says some other stuff. I'm not even arguing about that anymore because there's an ed code that gives you, without a doubt, the right to opt your child out of all or part of health education. Every gender issue is covered in the old frameworks and the new frameworks, considered health education. The law is really, really clear. You can opt out of all or part. I know there's a lot of confusion about that, and different school districts are saying different things, and different people and different groups are saying it. I am confident, after being in this industry, or whatever I call what I do, after 20 years, it is clear there is a law that allows you to do that, but you are going to have to exercise that. You are going to have to fight back. You can join with let parents decide and make sure that you're going about it the right way. You know, we think a lot of this stuff is common sense. You'll hear things today and you're like shocked it's going on. The other side has been at this a long time. This is a marathon, not a sprint. They have been strategic in what they're doing. Just like building a house, you can't go into Home Depot, order all the supplies, have them show up and build your house. You have to have a plan, a strategy. You have to anticipate, whoa, what if there is an earthquake? How are we building our foundation? It's that way in dealing with these policies and going up against the left in changing that and asserting your parental rights. There are a lot of things that through our experience we have anticipated. I know what the other side's going to say. I know what they're going to complain about. I know what they're going to say about putting an item on the agenda. So we want to work with you and take all our experience with school boards and really help you push these policies forward. They're concrete steps. I know a lot of people, it's so frustrating, like, what can I do? And I'll just say, this isn't in my talk, but I know I've seen some of the questions that are coming out. I'm not addressing SB 48 or the social study textbooks. That's social studies, that's totally different solution, different everything. So I just want you to know, I know that's a problem, but this issue with this education code is a concrete step that we can take back and actually push back and gain some ground. And that's why this is one of the policies that we've chosen and one of the issues we want to push. So we have opt-out forms at several tables in the back. Those of you that registered or signed up at one of the tables for email, we will be sending out the opt-out form. The great thing about this is it's narrowly defined to health and sexual health education. And the last paragraph says, I need you to contact me and tell me, make sure you received this form of me telling you this ed code applies and this objects to my moral beliefs. So if somebody asked me out there, well, what if they don't? Well, contact CRI at that point and then we'll talk about what to do. But this is a form that you can start using tomorrow. And we want to see kids opting out. I don't know how old Josh is, 83, 36. We opted him out of sex ed in 9th grade and sat down with him and said, for us, we've had the talk, it's more of a principled thing that we don't believe this is the role of government, and so we're not going to have you sit in sex ed. How do you feel about that? And he was, the other siblings call him the golden child, so we kind of knew he wasn't going to say, no, because he was, or at least he pretended to be compliant. I think he is still. So he sat out, and only one other student sat out with him. But I remember sitting on the baseball field as he was playing, and another mom was like, really, you opted Josh out? And I said, yeah. She said, I so wanted to, but he was so afraid he'd be the only one. How wrong are things that we're so afraid to protect our kids and intimidated by the school system that we just go, oh, okay, we'll put them in. It's not going to harm them. You're in 9th grade. You're 14 years old. The last thing you need to be doing is seeing these graphic pictures. My husband says it all the time. There is no condom for the heart. And if those of you that saw Monica's presentation, that is not unusual. That is going on in every school district. We have an open records request going out to every single school district that asks which people have done training, what school districts have, because I know a lot of you don't believe it's going on in your, the plaque, going on in your school district. But it is. I haven't found one school district that it's not. And in the next couple of months, we'll reveal what curriculum every single school district is using, and who's been trained, and where and when they were trained. So you'll know, just like Monica was talking, that they've been trained by Cardia and what they tell them in that training. As a matter of fact, I got a call, I get them every day, from someone that was at one of the trainings and being told about the other opt-out forms, and I'm sure they'll say it about ours. Planned Parenthood was telling the sex ed teachers that they were training, if you don't have an opt-out form in the original handwriting of the parent, it's no good. That's nowhere in law. But if you then have your sex education teacher, your health teacher, say, I can't honor this, or the school district not honor it because that's what they were told and they're afraid of being sued, your kid's in that class. So it's up to you to make sure they got that opt-out and they know you mean business and that your child will not be in those classes. And they have to give them an alternative by law. If I could go everywhere, I'm for cloning if it were me and only me. I would go everywhere and I would go assert your rights for you. I can't do it, you have to. They're your kids. You have to make the really, really tough, courageous decisions, and sometimes our kids get mad. I would joke in our home that you don't really have any rights till you're 18, out of the house, and working. Like there's like this whole checklist you have. None of them are in, well, not that that would matter. But anyway, so far they're all talking to us. But that's our job, and I know how hard it is. I have a daughter still upset that I wouldn't let her in jazz because of the hip shaking. I can't even remember this, but she does. This was critical, and I'm like, okay, I'll pay for the counseling. I don't know. Britney Spears is not doing well right now. I was afraid that's what would happen. Make the tough decisions for your kids. That's what you're there for. God gave them to you, not to the government. Do your job. I can't do it for you as much as I'd like to. So I'm going to leave you with my very favorite quote, and you can change the slide, but I love it. And for those of you that have been watching online or at this conference, this is from William Wilberforce, and it says, you may choose to look the other way, and this is true for all of us, but you can never say again that you did not know. So my challenge to you is, what are you going to do to take back our schools, to protect our children's innocence, and to stand with the other parents that are so courageous in going against the culture? Now is the time to act.